Welcome back, everybody, to the top 8 of the Hearthstone Masters Tour in Las Vegas, Nevada from the Link Hotel. My name is Frodan. I am joined by Derek Brown, who just is hot off the presses off of getting made up and dolled all pretty and nilly-willy. What's up? How you doing, Derek?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to get through to the top 8 now. A bit of an unfortunate loss there for Fino in our first match in the initial deciders matches now that we're through to top 8. But we are showing absolutely no signs of slowing. Two very, very strong players that we have up next in Kalàxz and tom60229, I believe.
That's right. The 2017 world champion that was crowned in 2018 in Amsterdam. Going up against Kalàxz, one of France's finest. As we are taking a look at the bracket real quick, this is a play into the second match of Group A. This is double elimination. So for Fino fans, he's going to be playing in the elimination match tomorrow. And then Possessi will move on. And that winner's match is really important, not only because, of course, getting closer to the championship, but one thing that Gallon and Frozen and Dog and I were talking about right outside the venue was about the implications of Grandmasters. You know, if you're able to be the best performing player in your region, that actually ends up being heavy implications for how Grandmasters is positioned for the following year. Because right now, if you're Possessi, tom60229 is the only other APAC player right now. And so by de facto, Possessi is the #1 contender for Asia Pacific to replace the lowest Grandmaster next season. So this is something to consider. With every single win, more money, which means a better position for them to be in Grandmasters. And the same thing applies to Kalàxz as well. If he can continue to get a win here against some other players that are really established, like tom60229, he gets one step closer to potentially replacing someone from Europe in Grandmasters after Season 2.
And I would be really, really happy to see Kalàxz in contention to get through to Grandmasters, because I believe for the vast majority of last year, he was pretty much tied with countryman Swids in terms of points, both very, very high indeed in the amount of points. In the end, Swids did end up getting the spot in Grandmasters, but Kalàxz, I think, is such a strong player and definitely deserves his spot. As we can see with his pretty strong deck-building decisions, going with this mage with the Luna's Pocket Galaxy has done very well against the field of vastly warriors that we've seen so far. But here in top 8, with 5 out of 8 of the players bringing mage, he needs to have a little bit more to actually deal with the mage mirror rather than the anti-warrior tech. And it doesn't look like he's got all too much that is specifically designed to take on the mages.
Yeah, I think the only mage player that has direct mage tech, ironically enough, is tom60229. Right? The one player that he probably does not want to play against in terms of the mage mirror. Having things like that polymorph and the questing adventures, which can be really powerful as swing tools. And more importantly, just as threats, right? Questing Adventure, when we saw Tom go up against Dog, it goes unchecked for a turn, and a few turns later it's a 20-20. Yeah. And you just can't stop it whatsoever. Absolute snowball that just comes down the hill, and then you get caught by it. So we'll see if Tom's able to utilize that to his benefit. I do feel like the mage mirrors ends up making you play in suboptimal ways a lot of times, because your opponent's trying to disrupt your turns and also your mana expenditure, and then you're trying to like save your freezes while trying to develop big, and then you like factor sea giants into the equations. It'll be really tricky. So I want to see what these players have got when the things don't line up correctly. Right? Everyone knows what to do when they have Khadgar, a Mountain Giant, and Conjur's Calling in the mana to play all of it. It's more about what you do when you are forced into bad positions, which is what makes the mage deck really fun to play.
I agree, and that's kind of what we saw from Fino in the last game when he popped off in those first few turns with Khadgar, Conjurer's Calling on a Sorcerer's Apprentice, and he managed to hit, what was it, Mana Worm and Magic Dart Frog on the 2-drop slot. It kind of looked like he couldn't lose in that position, but those mage mirrors can get pretty grindy if they're not a blowout victory right at the start, and we did see Possessi going on to take the win in that matchup. But here, an entirely different kettle of fish, with Tom having a strong anti-mage side deck that he can switch to after this first game. For game 1, however, he has to make do with what he's got. But what he's got is pretty good with this starting hand, I would say, and being on the coin as well. This is none too shabby.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a pretty decent start here, and I think that just by having the coin, you feel already pretty good. Yeah. Going second gives you that extra card, getting that extra spell. It's not very common for that to be the case. A lot of times, in strategy games in general, going first tends to give you the advantage because you're the one taking initiative. Not necessarily the case in such a volatile back and forth like Cyclone Mage Mirrors.
And not quite an explosive start, or it's looking to be, as we've seen in some of the other Mage matchups with Tom not having access to an early Mountain Giant. It looks like he'll be focusing much more heavily on a kind of mid-rangey, aggressive-ish game plan that these Mage decks so often do fall into with an early Apprentice and Mana Cyclone. But it doesn't really have the support for that either, weirdly enough, with no cheap spells to go in combination with the Mana Cyclone outside of the coin, obviously. He's going to be unable to actually develop that much and is kind of just at the mercy of this Banana Buffoon.
Yeah, Banana Buffoon Sorcerer's Apprentice dynamic is pretty interesting, given that the bananas often are so important to keep your hand size high, but at the same time, it's a pretty valuable tempo tool at the same time. Look at this play from Tom. He's going to Conjurer's Calling his Sorcerer's Apprentice. He gets Archmage Arugel, which is a legendary that copies whatever minions you draw. And then he gets... the
Mana Reservoir.
Yes, which is a +1 spell damage minion.
I guess now he's just wondering whether he wants to coin out the Mana Cyclone. I imagine that he will end up doing so. It was really just looking at breakpoints of mana. Does he want to go Ziliax next turn? And I don't think it was all too pressing. So I think I like getting the couple of spells while he can, because 2 as it currently stands is about as good as he's going to get.
Yeah, I kind of like seeing Tom like this, you know? It's been a while since I feel like I see Tom really locked in. Before, I feel like, you know, in the past year or two when Tom was kind of like still competing, but it felt like he already had climbed that peak of the mountain. He was more laying back and just kind of like taking it easy and just doing quick mental math, but now he's like locked in and engaged. And I feel like that's really scary, just because, you know, we all know how good Tom can be. He's one of the most consistent players. In fact, even going back to his World Championship year, there's people compiling data of like every region's historical performance across ladder and all this stuff, and Tom was like 3 standard deviations above the second-ranked player.
Really?
He was that much ahead of everybody over the course of 4 or 5 years.
That's pretty sick.
And it's like, no wonder this guy like dominated Impact for so long.
And I'm glad we're seeing that. It's a similar story not only to Tom, but also to Nightria, where when he actually really knuckles down with Hearthstone, he can do some miraculous stuff.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of really nice, miraculous stuff, 0 mana spells and 0 mana tempo cards. We kind of talked about this exact dynamic. Banana Buffoon using it for tempo. I mean, Kalàxz does strand his early game, or his Mountain Giant hand for the early game. But, you know, what's important is him trying to make sure that Tom can't fight back efficiently. And that's what makes it more difficult to handle. Tom's best move is once again to do the Conjurer's Calling to fight back for the tempo. Like, everything else is too expensive, but I don't know if he's going to go for that.
It feels just so miserable to be going for that. I think when we have, like, when it's the second half of a twin spell and he has Giants, Rabble Bouncers in hand, it's just too passive. Like, it gets cleared up on board, and then he's just miles behind.
Now, the question for Kalàxz is he going to just pressure or just leave the 0/6 onto the board? Because that Blast Wave actually gives the Blast Wave does 3 damage now, which actually incidentally kills the Banana Buffoon. That hero power is if Kalàxz chooses to kill the Mana Reservoir, and then he's able to still collect only 1 spell. I think if I'm Kalàxz, I favor the tempo here. I kind of want Twilight Drake onto the board, even though it's only a 4/6. I feel like having it on the board is really important. Or do you feel like it's better to draw cards here?
I think the Arcane Intellect here is fantastic. Like, this hand as it currently stands is not that good. If Tom does anything even mildly powerful, you need to find something strong either to react with or ideally to go with first. And Mana Cyclone at the moment may just be that. Mirror Image Mana Cyclone is not bad.
Okay. Yeah, just getting some semblance of board, which actually incidentally plays directly into the Blast Wave.
That's fair.
I mean, that's not something that you can reasonably justify playing around all the time, especially with 2 spells being created off the Blast Wave. This is devastating, though. Come on. Oh, my goodness. And a polymorph. Are you kidding me?
All the pressure that Kalàxz had built up over those turns, his entire advantage just thrown out the window.
Yeah. I mean, I was using caster vision to kind of talk about this, and I feel like I feel for Kalàxz in that spot. That one is brutal.
Yeah. I mean, the way that Tom capitalizes on this is really the only thing he has to consider here, because if he does go for, say, a Mountain Giant of his own instead of polymorphing, he could, from his position, think he's under threat of, what, Khadgar mirror image, and because of that, he's thinking, all right, let's just get this out the way before any kind of nonsense can occur, and next turn, he is going to hop off.
Yes, he has Mountain Giant and Conjurer's Calling himself, at the very least. Kalàxz has another Mountain Giant. So at least he's playing threats, but it's kind of like what you were saying before. It's there. His hand is still looking fairly weak.
Yeah. And I think he's gone about it mostly the right way. You know, he was digging for the power cards like Conjurer's Calling, maybe even another Frost Nova if he wanted to go for some kind of a just an aggro state where he tries to burst his opponent down while freezing the board. But he just hasn't found the cards he was looking for. Like, I mean, Mountain Giant is fine here, but there's none of the cards that go with it, like the Khadgar or the Conjurer's Calling.
What do you think about tempoing out things like Archmage Antonidas?
I think that might be where we're at.
Because your opponent doesn't really play a lot of removal spells. I mean, I'm looking through Tom's deck list. I mean, he's not playing anything that's naturally generated, and he also did use 2 spells that were created through Mana Cyclone.
Wow.
As well as the Blast Wave.
I think it was very tempting. I think the reason why Kalàxz is saving the Archmage Antonidas is very possibly for a turn 10 Antonidas into Frost Nova in order to try and go for a burst plan at that point. I'm not sure if he will even make it there as it currently stands. Or maybe he was setting up for Antonidas mirror image on this turn.
Yeah, I mean, with a Frost Nova as well, his hand scales pretty well into 10 mana, so he can go for Archmage, Antonidas, and Frost Nova if he needs to, which ends up being a pretty important play if Tom ends up winning the board and he needs some Hail Mary attempts.
Yeah.
So then, in Kalàxz's mind, how does he diffuse this situation, or does he even acknowledge it? I mean, it seems like he's just going to be fighting behind on board. And if he uses a freeze here, and Tom uses a freeze, then he's really in trouble.
Right, and the problem is for Kalàxz is that he knows that there is a Conjurer's Calling in hand because for the first half of it has already been used. If he didn't know that, he could just pray that Tom's hand was absolutely dreadful and go for Antonidas mirror image push face and try and get some kind of a cheese lethal. But I think he knows that that's just not really going to happen. Spellbinder's pretty spicy though. As it currently stands, that would divert the 1 copy of Conjurer's Calling.
That is true. Unfortunately, playing the Spellbender means he wouldn't be able to get this down.
Yeah.
So I think he just wants to get the best possible board.
I love pushing face though. I think no matter what Kalàxz does here, he can't afford to be trading in this instance. He needs to try and set up for, like I said, Antonidas Frost Nova on turn 10 and try and push for a lethal.
I'm looking for some way to Tom to swing the board even more, utilizing like a very cheap Sea Giant, perhaps even putting Rabble Bouncer in the way. Yeah. Your opponent still hasn't used any Frost Nova. They're trying to use Mirror Image to stall. I was thinking for Tom, like if you wanted to use Ziliax to get through the 0-2 pretty efficiently, it seems like a nice logical conclusion. And I don't feel like Rabble Bouncer is better than Sea Giant, so I agree with this. Now, would you trade into the Sea Giant, or would you trade into the Giant, or are you just ignoring it and going face?
Like Kalàxz's play of going face there did set off quite a lot of alarm bells, I think, because it makes you afraid of freeze effects. He could just be going for a double Frost Nova kind of play to push you out of the game. So I think trading here, given that Tom is very likely ahead on resources, is a very reasonable way to go about it.
And the Conjurer's Calling
big,
pickup.
That's very big.
Yes, although 10 mana, the minions in the 10 mana slot are a lot less reliable than the Mountain Giant slot at 12.
That's fair.
So, I mean, it could range anything to have 4 12s to just just basically creating more 8/8s.
Yeah.
And then you have all the way up to Deathwing, which is 12/12 power level, which is pretty good.
Yeah, Deathwing's what you're looking for. Hakar is generally what you're not looking for. In some fringe instances, it can be pretty good. But I think I like this from Kalàxz. It looks like he's setting up for a double Conjurer's Calling and very possibly a Frost Nova as well. That's pretty bad, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, he's looking for the big, powerful 10 drops. Finds another Sea Giant and Nazari. That's not what he's looking for at all.
Ooh.
Oh my goodness!
Ooh. Tom now can go for what? Khadgar, Conjurer's Calling, Frost Nova. I mean, you just do it, right?
Yes.
You just do it.
That feels like an overwhelming board position to get past. Oh, and pretty much the ideal setup of having Grave Horrors and Mountain Giants just to make sure you get all that power in.
Yeah.
Huh. No Frost Nova. Even more restraint from Tom. He says that I can handle it even if you freeze my board, which he is accurate on. Yeah. Even if Kalàxz froze the board, he'd be okay. And it's important because we talked about this throughout the weekend multiple times. It's the Frost Nova battles. Whoever has the last say, very similar to Ice Block, whoever can restrain from using it will be the one in the advantage because they get to have the final attack and you get frozen.
And this from Tom shows fantastic restraint. As you were pointing out, he can clear off all the taunts in play, but then if he doesn't have a freeze of his own, Kalàxz is still pretty decisively dead.
What to do?
So what can he do instead? If he Flame Strikes and Frost Bolts, is that enough to just even survive?
Yeah, I was looking if he could do any kind of Luna's Pocket Galaxy play, and then next turn pray he draws Arcane Intellect into the God draws, but I think that's just so unlikely to happen.
So I think he has to Frostbolt one minion and then trade into this other Grave Horror. Oh, whoa. Now I'm starting to see the brilliance of Tom's ping here, actually.
Yeah.
Because now there's no convenient trade for Kalàxz to have afterwards, and he has that free mana.
It effectively dealt so much damage there.
Yeah. Nicely done there by Tom.
He is somewhat running out of pressure, though, as it currently stands, and if he can't find anything big off the Arcane Intellect, the amount of damage is starting to just peter out.
Oh, boy. That's a pretty solid one.
Somebody order a bomb.
Foregoes it. Looks like he wants instead.
Wow.
Generate more resources. Mirror Entity is interesting. Mirror Entity is really interesting because Kalàxz has played a lot of his cheap minions. He's played his Sorcerer's Apprentices. He's played a Banana Buffoon. And I mean, even if your opponent plays like Luna, you're not too mad at it because you can just catch up with them in resource count as well. Counterspell and Frost Nova. This is really aggressive play, and he has a second Frost Nova, so I think in his mind he's making a victory push.
Yeah, I think this is just realizing that his minions in play are really, really valuable.
And Kalàxz has nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he just has to play Antonidas, Elemental Evocation, and Ping. That just doesn't win, though. Maybe he has to move towards Antonidas and Frost Nova as his only chance.
What to do?
That doesn't win either.
Right. So he knows he's going to hero power. With his remaining mana, first of all, he has to figure out the secret.
Right.
And the hero power doesn't tell him anything. If he plays a powerful minion like Antonidas and then tries to go for a fireball, he might just get counter-lethal just by giving his opponent the ability to kill him.
Yeah.
So he can test the secret as well with evocation.
He's in such a bad spot, though. Like, he has to be taking risks. He can't really afford to play around anything, I don't think.
Luna's Pocket Galaxy. 11 showing. Tom has 13, 14 to the Banana Buffoons.
I don't know if there's any one-mana minions he can get off the top that would save him here. It's like it pretty much has to be Frost Nova, I think, to have a chance with Antonidas.
There's the possibility that Luna comes out and it's just like this infinite chain of really cheap stuff. But the problem is Kalàxz would have to play Antonidas also, which means his mana is restricted. So his best draw is actually Arcane Intellect into Luna into a bunch of other cheap stuff.
Okay.
Yes. Because he needs that extra card to be cheaper.
Yeah.
What to do?
I mean, it's possible. You know, he needs to be playing to these kind of fringe outs in this situation when he has pretty much nothing he can play without just dying.
Yeah, I agree. Smart play from Tom, trading into the Dragon.
Yeah, just in case.
Yep. I mean, Kalàxz only has used one Conjurer's Calling. There are weirder things that's happened. And that's not going to be it. Kalàxz with his double Dragon hand. Going to concede. tom60229 takes the first game of this best of 3. Trip down memory lane, if you will.
It is indeed. His mage play looking very, very strong indeed. I love the point you're bringing up. If it just feels like the good old days where he's really zoned in, really playing some very focused Hearthstone. And when he does that, he is just one of the most formidable forces in the game.
Yeah, it was very nice of him to let someone else do all the work in 2018 and get the wins and W's. But Tom's like, all right, you know what? Crack his knuckles. Like, time to show these people what's up. Of course, all jokes aside, though, it did look like Tom was going to bust her out pretty early in this Masters tournament. I saw him at a pretty weak record. I think it was like 2-2.
Right.
And then he just like rattled off like 7 wins in a row. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy, he might actually do it. And then he was like, yeah, I might do it. I was like, you're actually in the top 8? He's like, yeah, I didn't think so, but I just kept playing and I just got there. I was like, all right, man, good for you.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I think we saw that as well from Bloody Face CN also had a pretty rough start, 0-2, and then up to 7-2. Shout
yep.
to. Yeah,
Nyria was the same thing too.
True.
He was at 2-2, and I think he rattled 8 in a row. That's why you don't give up. It's That's why we have that big Swiss event, so that way, if it's 2-2 in normal double elimination groups, you're gone.
Yeah.
Right. You're done for the tournament. Not the case here in the Masters Tour Las Vegas. tom60229 switching to his tertiary deck. We got confirmation, something that we were anticipating before.
Yep.
Doomsayer and Ziliax and Rival Bouncers, not nearly as useful as, say, pressuring your opponent as fast as turn 3, and then having those polymorphs, as you can tell, really strips away Kalàxz's ability to just drop a giant confidently. Yep. And then you add the fact the normal spells that you get from Mana Cyclone and the odd blast wave or 2.
Yeah, this is kind of gone from bad to worse for Kalàxz. I hate to say it, especially as I can see to our left over here, despite an almost empty convention center, the few French players left here all watching and supporting their countryman Kalàxz. It warms my heart.
I see Swids with Tars there.
Trek.
Yep. Like all of them are there just to try to hang out and support fellow Frenchmen. Meanwhile, Tom, I think all of his buddies went to go hit the tables. Dude, they go hard. Let me tell you something. You know, the Asians, man, they love some good old gamba. Fun times, of course. So Tom's like, you know what? I'm just gonna improve my bankroll a little bit, and then I'll join you guys later. Because 8th place is guaranteed $10,000. With each series win, you go up $2,000. You go from 10 to 12 to 14 to 16. That's 5th through 8th.
Yep.
And then 4th is 20K, 3rd is 30K, 2nd is 50K, and 1st place is $100,000. As much money as it was for Firebat Osaka to win the World Championships just a few years ago.
All thanks to the, partially thanks to the Masters Tour bundle.
Oh yeah, big shout out to the fans.
Yep.
You all made it possible. All right, so Kalàxz, game number 2. He's on the coin this time.
Oh, and he's got a very nice hand to be going in combination with the coin.
He's got the dream trio of Khadgar, Mountain Giant, and the Conjurer's Calling.
Kalàxz just sitting there thinking, me and the boys, ready to crush Tom.
Yeah. That would be actually pretty funny if you made that meme.
I know.
Don't you need a 4th member, though, to make it officially the boys?
He's the 4th member.
Oh, because you make 2 of them, right?
Well, no, Kalàxz is one of the boys, and Khadgar Giant and Conjurer's Calling is also a boy.
Yeah. I was thinking you do that, or like maybe do Mountain Giant and Graveheart.
Oh, yeah, me and the boys.
Right.
That's pretty good. I'll see what I can whip up after this.
I can see Derek already, his eyes light up. He's been beaten down by the mage and the warrior mirrors, but when you talk about memes, he is excited. Good early game here for Kalàxz to just stave off the pressure. You know, Sorcerer's Apprentice, denied. Questing Adventure, denied.
Yeah,
Another
very
Questing Adventure, though.
I mean, we saw earlier with Tom up against Dog, where Dog, unable to kill off the Questing Adventure at the start, the game just completely flew out of his control. Like, he had absolutely no chance to win the game after the Questing survived.
Yeah, I think that there's no point in going to the Magic unless you can guarantee the evocation. Even then, you probably still want to do it with the Questing Adventure.
Yeah.
There is the... it's been a while since we made really bad cash jokes like, oh, he has lethal because he has magic trick in questing adventure. I'm sure it's been done a few times, but at least I haven't yet.
You underestimate my power of how bad I am as a caster.
That's right. You've concentrated all of the Infinity Stones of memes into your gauntlet. Oh, man.
Yeah. And what did it cost? My career.
Oh, man. Kalàxz, he's got 7 cards in hand. So the Giant costs 5. Next turn, he could play the Giant.
It's such a tough decision spot. Does he go coin Luna's Pocket Galaxy for the power of some potential 1-cost high-power minions? Or does he go for the Giant Conjurer's Calling Khadgar a little bit earlier?
Right. I mean, he's drawn so much of the heavy cards that he wants to discount.
He's such a difficult decision.
Right. And
Give me a quest.
it's only going to get a little bit trickier, too, because now Tom goes for this magic trick. Arcane Missiles, Evocation, Mana Cyclone, Kalàxz uncomfortable to say the least. The only way to deal with this questing adventure is a Conjurer's Call.
Right. Which he definitely does not want to do, but he may be forced into it, as that is a pretty blooming good selection of spells off of a Mana Cyclone.
Quality stuff. Okay, he has 2 Conjurer's Callings now.
I think he has to do it.
Yeah, and the silly thing is,
Oh! What?
Tom is even laughing.
What?
When you mess with the bull, you get the horns. That's what you get for going against the world champ. You dare challenge him?
This is Tom and the boys now. He's saying, you know what? You think you've got it.
Wow. Kalàxz is stunned. He's like, I don't know what to... Do I play another card?
What
Do
does
I
he
just
do?
concede? Do I take my headset off and ask Tom very politely to have mercy?
Imagine how he must be feeling. He's finally scraped through the Swiss record. He gets to this point, and this happens to him.
Yeah, I mean, Tom is favored in the Mage Mirror because of these cards.
Yes,
though.
it's true.
Because of that, it's force plays. And also, he has Polymorph even if Kalàxz just played a threat. But it's just, this is all icing on the cake.
Man.
Tom is riding this gravy train all the way to the Vegas buffets.
Oh!
Okay.
That's the card.
Yeah.
That's the card that Kalàxz needed to get back in this game.
Yes, he has Khadgar, Mountain Giant, Conjurer's Calling. That is the nuts.
We must band together.
Look at what both of these players are doing. This game is so powerful.
And the Sea Giant.
Oh!
I forgot the Sea Giant goes down to 1.
He's literally just threatening lethal next turn. But he didn't get any taunts. Is he dead?
Uh-oh. Oh my gosh, hold on. 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 Fireball is 7, so 17.
He's dead.
18, 19.
What?
He just kills him because he didn't get any taunts.
What? He's literally just dead. He has the amount of mana to cast the spells to buff the questing
He just
adventurer.
has to go Fireball face.
Oh my god.
Tom wins 2-0 over Kalàxz, and he can't believe it. Fireball, Sea Giant, all the damage that he could ever ask for, and the second questing adventure that came off of Conjurer's Calling.
Man, you have got to feel for Kalàxz after that one.
Yeah! That was straight up cheese, bro.
And there you have it. What are you going to do? Kalàxz giving it his absolute best shot, but with a little dollop of RNG from Tom. And his, to be fair, his well-teched anti-mage tertiary deck.
Yes.
He comes to a pretty swift 2-0 victory.
Yeah, it is worth noting that out of the 5 mages in the top 8, only 1 player has a second or tertiary deck that's geared for the Mage Mirror.
Yeah.
Everyone else was anticipating rogues and warriors, maybe even like the OTK paladin type stuff, like
anti-mech stuff.
Yeah, like or anti-mech stuff. There's a lot of other second and tertiary decks. Tom is the one that had the read that mage will be really good, so he went 1 level deeper, right? Because there's the rogue being good, and everyone wants to crush it with warrior. And then people are like, well, I want to beat warrior, and he's like, well, I want to beat warrior and beat the people that are trying to beat warrior.
Yeah.
And so it's rewarded with that, but. Wow, I do not know what to say, because that game I thought was going to go at least until turn 7, and it barely did.
I am at a loss for words, and I'm sad for Kalàxz. I have to say, he's a player that I'm very, very fond of, and I feel was hard done by not getting through to Grandmasters this year, or into the first season at least. But still, the possibility. He's not out, exactly. We are in a double elimination bracket, and if he can beat Mino, the only undefeated player left in Grandmasters, I believe, at an 8-0 record, he definitely has his work cut out for him.
Right.
But he's in with a shot.
And also for Kalàxz too, this is direct competition against a Grandmaster that doesn't really necessarily matter for now. But remember, if he beats him, he's like indirectly making his case for Grandmasters by beating a Grandmaster, right? So it'd feel extra sweet, even though obviously he'd like to have grabbed the first win there over Tom. Yeah.
And I think he played very well. I think Tom did get the cards.
With the 6 turns that he got?
He did get the cards he needed to win it. But, it's always a good distinction to make in Hearthstone. Just because you get very lucky does not mean that you didn't play well to get yourself into those situations.
I mean, there were a couple of tricky turns there, and it could have changed the entire course of the game in the series. So I think Tom played very well. I think Kalàxz also played very sharp. And Tom comes out ahead with that series. And he's going to play Possessi in the upper brackets on all APAC finals in Group A. That's really cool to see up in the winner's bracket. When we come back, we're going to have match number 3. It's going to be Hypno from Switzerland going up against Dog from the United States. Don't go anywhere. More Hearthstone Masters Tour action live from Las Vegas.